One of the amusing memes on Facebook regarding the pandemic reads, "Introverts, please put down your book and check on your extrovert friends. They are not okay." A few years ago, a psychological study was done at the University of Virginia that described the lengths people will go to avoid introspection, the lengths we will go to avoid places of stillness and quiet in our lives. In 11 experiments involving more than 700 people, the majority of participants reported that they found it unpleasant to be alone in a room with their thoughts for just 6 to 15 minutes. Moreover, in one experiment, 64% of men and 15% of women began self-administering mild electric shocks when left alone to think. It didn't matter if the subjects engaged in the contemplative exercise at home or in the lab, or if they were given suggestions of what to think about, like a coming vacation. They just didn't like being alone in their own heads. Now, self-administering electric shocks seems a little extreme, but chances are, when you consider your life or the life of those around you, the results of the study are not surprising. In the creation story found in Genesis, God is busy creating for 6 days, separating the land from the waters, creating light, fashioning the sun and the moon and the stars, plants, animals, creeping and crawling and flying creatures, a man and a woman. And then it is finished. The ancient writer reports, God finished the work and rested on the 7th day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the 7th day and hallowed it. And later, the divine pattern in creation is prescribed to give shape and form to human lives. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath to the Lord your God. You should not do any work. And it is a life-changing way of thinking, that work is not finished until it is enjoyed in rest. The Sabbath in its original intent and form is a gift from God. And yet over the years, the religious people, the bureaucrats, received the gift of the Sabbath and turned it into a rule, a legal requirement. And so by the time of Jesus, there were countless regulations that governed how one was to keep the Sabbath holy. Over the years, the regulations were set to cover every conceivable contingency. Under Sabbath regulations, a person could not carry a load heavier than a dried fig. But if an object weighed half that amount, he could carry it twice. A man could ride a donkey without breaking the Sabbath rules, but if he carried a switch to make it go faster, he would be guilty of laying a burden on the donkey. You could swallow vinegar on the Sabbath, but not gargle with it. One time, Jesus and his disciples broke a handful of Sabbath laws by picking and eating grain as they walked through a field on the Sabbath. The Pharisees, who were watching for just such an infraction, caught and accused him. In response, Jesus said, "The Sabbath is made for human beings, not human beings for the Sabbath." In saying this, Jesus points back to the original intent of the Sabbath. It is a gift meant to promote the health and wholeness of human beings. But of course, it is not just the Pharisees who made a mess of the Sabbath. Over the years, we in the church have done to the Sabbath what religious people have a propensity to do. We have taken something life-giving and made it into another jury obligation or burden to be carried. Chances are some of you have memories of former days of what it meant to keep the Sabbath. My grandparents on my father's side were Baptists before they had 2 sons who became Presbyterian ministers. They were Baptist and Sabbatarians. They lived in Wingham, and when we would visit them, my grandmother loved to play games, crazy eights, fish, lost air, any day of the week, any day except Sunday. On Sunday, we didn't bother asking her because Sunday was the Sabbath, and that meant we could not have fun. On Sunday in Wingham, everything was closed. You couldn't go swimming on a hot day because the public pool was closed. The only show in town was church, and for a young kid, it wasn't much of a show. Sunday was, for us, the most boring day of the week. I imagine they worked hard at not working on the Sabbath. Society has changed. Now we have renounced and rejected the legalism of Sabbath keeping to the point that Sunday looks like every other day. And while there's probably no going back to the days when the wider culture kept the Sabbath holy, it will not be 1955 anytime soon, there are signs some are rediscovering the practice of Sabbath keeping and the gift that it was intended to be. An article in the Farmer's Almanac focused on the growing trend of taking a technology Sabbath. The author points out that with the omnipresence of electronic media in our lives, many of us find ourselves electronically overwhelmed. The answer is not to go off the grid completely and permanently, but to take a break from it one day a week, a technology Sabbath. What would happen if you turned off your phone for 24 hours and didn't check your Facebook feed or Twitter account? The world would probably not come to an end, and who knows, you might be better for it. The article says, temporarily cutting the technological umbilical cord opens up numerous possibilities for meaningful experiences in the real world. Spend time pushing your kids on the swings at the park. Go camping or hiking in the woods. Linger over a cup of coffee and a good book. Practice the lost art of real conversation. I know for many people this present time of social distancing and self-isolation feels like a kind of exile or imprisonment. It feels like you have done something terribly wrong and have been sent to your room for 15 days to think about it. But what if this time could be a gift in disguise? A time for rest and recreation, a Sabbath time. This is a poem by Lynn Unger entitled Pandemic. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling. Give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down, and when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live.